Good afternoon. I'm John Bancevich from ITS. Thank you for participating in today's virtual town hall. This is an annual spring tradition at USF, presented today under unprecedented circumstances related to the global pandemic and the effects of COVID-19. This is a Zoom webinar, and you are joined by more than 800 members of the USF community. We cannot see you. This session is being recorded and will be captioned for accessibility purposes, then posted next week on My USF. As you listen to this session, if you have questions, please submit your question via the webinar's Q&A tool. You may submit questions anonymously. Now, please welcome the Reverend Paul Fitzgerald of the Society of Jesus and President of the University of San Francisco.
Good afternoon. Thank you all very much for attending this virtual town hall meeting. This was certainly not the spring semester that any of us expected, but I want to offer a heartfelt thank you to all of you who have worked to reinvent the way we teach and mentor and support our students as we, as an academic community, moved to a remote learning and teaching environment. To our determined faculty and staff, thank you. Thank you for creating new approaches to getting our work done and interacting with each other when students are dispersed around the world, when you and our colleagues are setting up home offices and simultaneously caring for family members, friends, and neighbors. My prayers are with you, your families and friends, as each of you manage your personal as well as professional lives during this pandemic. As I have communicated previously, we are intending to open the fall semester on the ground if possible, but we do not yet know what that will look like exactly. We are actively discussing how to structure our summer courses, orientation programs for new students, and how our classrooms, residence halls, and co-curricular and mentoring programs will open and operate. We are in close touch with public health officials and government leaders as the uncertain COVID-19 situation continues to evolve. We are ensuring that we comply with directives from the city and state, and that our students and all campus community members and visitors are safe. We are in close touch with students and families who have committed to enrolling in summer courses, our late summer orientation programs, and our fall semester. More on our newest students in a moment. First, I want to touch on a topic close to all of our hearts: spring commencement. We are all deeply disappointed that we won't be honoring the achievements of our undergraduate and graduate students in St. Ignatius Church and celebrating on Welch Field. Instead, we are preparing to ship to all graduating students their caps and gowns. Our digital commencement hub is now live with video messages from all the deans and myself, and we will continue to populate this site with student-submitted photos, videos, speeches, and more. I hope you will visit it and share in this virtual celebration. I want to share now a short video animation with you. I hope you agree that it reminds us that this unprecedented commencement season is still a celebratory one. In the midst of the pandemic, the university community has come together and is bringing extraordinary levels of creativity and collaboration to our work. Our faculty members, now delivering courses online, are investing enormous effort into creating the highest quality educational experience for USF students. Our administrative staff are creating new processes to support and mentor our students. We are all of us, doing what we must to navigate through this tumultuous period. To start us off today, I have asked Lester Deans, Assistant Vice Provost for Student Engagement and Co-Director of USF 101, to share some of the initiatives underway to support the remote engagement with students, as well as services for faculty and staff. And I've asked Professor Sonia Martin Poole, Associate Professor of Marketing and USFFA President, to share a bit about the work with our students and the perspective of faculty during this time of disruption and ingenuity.
Thank you, Father, for this opportunity. I wanted to start by talking about acknowledging that engagement is not the work of a person. It is the work, responsibility of all of us. Engaging our students and campus community has been the focus of many of our staff and faculty over the last few weeks, even while managing their own losses from the pandemic. COVID-19 has taught us so much. It's taught me how much my family appreciated me being away and physically working at USF. I guess I was a little crazy to think being at home would be a joyful time for us. I think they want me to go back to work as soon as possible. I was surprised by this. USF is not San Francisco. Its buildings, its structure that holds us on, we hold on to. Our colleagues at additional campuses have known this for some time. USF is the people, the connections, the relationships. It's the instruction given by our world-class faculty, the behind-the-scenes support by our staff, regardless of location. I've heard personal stories of staff who are mailing stoles and thank you notes to students from their own homes to make sure they get them in time for this month's celebration, within university guidelines, of course. This is why I work at a Jesuit school, not because of the buildings, but the community. The ways in which we work have shifted, but our commitment to our students is as strong, if not stronger than ever. This hilltop is always with us. The amount of work that has gone into virtually engaging our community has been both endless and ever evolving. I've attended virtual prayers, carnivals, dance parties, cooking classes, class presentations, performances, alumni career panel, and recognition ceremonies. I've watched more Instagram and TikTok videos than I ever have in my life. My team has started a podcast within 2 weeks of shelter in place. To colleagues that have been working and teaching remotely prior to COVID-19, you're the true rock stars. You're leading the way and sharing with us your talents and expertise. And we greatly appreciate you. To ITS, it has been both supporting our community, get up to speed on technology using teaching and programs, making this transition as seamless as possible. Thank you. To all the staff providing services I've never done before, including processing hundreds of emergency fund requests to students, taking care of their basic needs. We thank you. In regards to the working group, there are two things I wanted to mention. Don's at Home is a landing page developed to help curate engagement efforts into one site for the USF community to get resources, share stories, and get resources, share stories, and advertise events. Special thanks to my team in student engagement, HR, Correct, and web services for your help in putting this together. I encourage you all to check it out in the coming weeks. It's going to continue to evolve and change. Please share it with your classes and colleagues. Summer engagement. Michael Basita and Jeff Hamrick will speak later about enrollment. COVID-19 has required universities to reimagine how they're engaging students in the summer months. So this summer, we will revisit a previous model of offering summer orientation type experiences to incoming students to get them in contact with staff, faculty, and other students during the months of June and July. This is in addition to summer advising. We need to re-recruit our current students as well. The value of a USF education is in its instructors and personalized attention, providing with students to help them thrive. We'll work with our campus partners to think through creative ways to reach our incoming students. More information coming in the next week or so. Thanks for the opportunity. Now, I'd like to turn it over to Professor Poole.
Thank you, Lester. Thank you for your service leadership. And thank you, Father Fitzgerald, for the opportunity to be part of the program today. My name is Sonia Martin Poole. I am an associate professor in the School of Management and president of the USF Faculty Association. The past 7 weeks have been, for all of us, a period of unprecedented disruption and uncertainty. As we close out this semester, on behalf of the full-time librarians and faculty, I wanted to take a few moments to give a brief update on the ways we have responded during this crisis and our hopes and intentions as we move forward. The librarians and faculty have stepped up and forward in remarkable ways to meet both urgent and emergent needs. And in my view, we, along with the rest of you, have been heroic in transforming the campus to meet the needs of this moment. First, we transformed our classrooms. With only 2 working days to implement, we, along with our part-time faculty colleagues and academic staff across the campus, took on the massive lift of instructional redesign and the shift to remote teaching. We have experimented with, adapted, and adjusted to distant learning and teaching, significantly increased our office hours, and have provided individualized instruction for students across the globe, from Accra to Shanghai. Faculty with clinical and our community engagement, faculty with clinical or community engaged learning curricula have pivoted to support community partners who have, of course, also been struggling with the tremendous changes that shelter in place has necessitated. Outside of the classroom, we reimagined the ways that we at USF provide essential support services to students. We have worked closely with staff at CASA and CAPS to provide students emotional support and tailored academic accommodations as they have lost jobs, relocated homes, cared for sick family members, and sadly even lost loved ones. We have offered dedicated support to admissions officers in strategic enrollment management by evaluating applications, speaking with prospective students and parents, assuring them that USF will be here, strong through this crisis. And to help our grads celebrate their accomplishments, we are taking the lead on creating department and program virtual graduation ceremonies and returning to campus to prepare for shipping to their homes the packages that contain their regalia. At the same time, faculty have pivoted to finding ways to even more deeply support the broader communities that we work with off campus. Some of us have provided support in our areas of expertise to local K-12 schools and districts, and to healthcare institutions, and to local and regional community organizations that do outreach, education, and direct services. We are also speaking to the press and policymakers, writing papers and articles, and signing amicus briefs. Many of us are also embedded in extended communities of care, our churches, neighborhoods, and chosen kin, all of which have needed more of our attention and support. As have our academic staff and administrative colleagues, we have done this while taking care of our elders, young children, teenagers, and returned college students in our families. We are doing this while sharing internet and home workspaces with members in our households who are trying to do the same. Internally, at the USFFA, we've also been working hard to find new ways to support the university. We have spent many hours consulting with our colleagues across campus and at other institutions and professional associations to better understand what our university needs from us and what we will need from USF to get through this together. 2 key things we are trying to improve amongst faculty are communication and education. For weeks, we have been working tirelessly behind the scenes to set the stage for greater shared governance at the university and to get the information we need to participate in decision-making. We've proposed new systems of shared governance to the administration. We are resurrecting old ones, such as the University Curriculum Committee that will start meeting this month. And we are developing new modalities for gathering and providing feedback over the summer and beyond. We recognize that everyone is scrambling and that there are many unknowns, but we need information and sustainable structures to meaningfully participate in supporting academic life at USF through the long haul. All of us carrying out the academic mission of the university, from faculty and librarians to program managers and program assistants, cannot do any of this the way we want to. Shelter in place is by no means ideal, but we're making a way and we're getting it done. And we continue to see that the smartest and most effective way we can do this is together with improved transparency and improved communication. Librarians and faculty are determined to keep learning and growing and sharing with one another to care for each other and support the mission of the university. We're trying things out, sharing with our peers, providing wonderful community spaces for thinking and dialogue with our students. While all of this is happening, we are also mourning things that we can no longer do. We are sad that we're not in class with our students and among our colleagues, and that we won't see our graduates walk the stage next week. But we are holding up and supporting our communities, our students, our institutions, while we balance teaching and research and caring for our loved ones. We're worried about the world, we are worried about the university, but we're glad to be in this together. While we may be doing things differently for the foreseeable future, I want to provide assurances that we will continue to operate at a high level and deliver outstanding learning experiences. And we will continue to respond to the crisis in courageous and innovative ways. COVID-19 represents a challenge, unlike any we've seen before. However, I'm optimistic that if we're able to keep the lines of communication open and decision-making transparent, inclusive, and mission-based, we will transform the challenge into an opportunity to become stronger and better collectively. Thank you. Now back to Father Fitzgerald.
Thank you so much, Sonia, and thank you, Lester. Lester's an old friend from Santa Clara, and I'm glad we were able to lure him up here to the city. And Sonia, let me give you one example. Professor Evelyn Rodriguez invited me to her senior sociology capstone class, I don't know, 8 days ago, 10 days ago. And I was amazed at her mastery of Zoom, and her ability to engage all of her students and then put them into breakout sessions and then pull them back in to do reporting out. And, you know, I know that this heroic effort, as you say, is going on across our entire university, and I'm in awe. I'm just in awe. Now, in all of this, USF is not alone. Every college and university in the nation is struggling in the wake of the economic uncertainty that the global pandemic has wrought. At USF, we are sharing knowledge with our AJCU sister schools and with a coalition of Bay Area universities. We're sending out regular email updates. Your deans and vice presidents, program directors, and department chairs all have information to share with you and want to hear from you. There are resources, FAQs on the website. Still, I know it's a confusing and frightening time. And sometimes information and answers do not get to you as fast as you'd like or as fast as you need. I hope the information you'll hear today will give you more facts and additional answers, but I know we always have to do better. The cabinet and leadership team are working on a number of scenarios that deal with forecasted financial shortfalls ranging from $15 to $100 million next year. With the huge uncertainty around enrollment, increased financial aid need, philanthropy, ancillary revenues from conferences and other sources, we must prepare for a range of cases. This is a painfully difficult time. Some members of our community have lost loved ones during the pandemic, and our hearts go out to them. We will be asking everyone to share in dealing with the challenges our community faces. We're looking at how to ensure we are efficiently and effectively accomplishing our priorities in a time of economic hardship and social disruption. I pledge to spell out these initiatives as we implement them in detail and with the transparency that Professor Poole talked about. Reducing the number of vacation days you have on the books is an important first step for your health and safety. There is a new FAQ on the HR website with more details on that. A hiring freeze is in place. We're beginning conversations with our represented groups of employees about other initiatives. We are also mapping out plans for possible layoffs and temporary furloughs. Scores of people from across USF are working together on these challenges. For this meeting, I'm asking the leads of several of our 11 working groups, tactical groups, to report on what has been accomplished, what they are working on, and what's next. Today's presentations do not represent all the working groups. Most of the commencement working groups' excellent recommendations are well underway. As a matter of fact, we're starting to pack boxes today down in McLaren. Lester Deans touched on the virtual engagement work that is taking place, and a brand new public health working group, staffed mostly by faculty from the School of Nursing and Health Professions, is getting started in anticipating our fall semester. Thank you to those faculty for stepping up. This is especially timely to have this update now, because Friday, May 1st, was the deposit deadline for new undergraduate students. And Michael DeCita will share the early enrollment information and the outlook for the fall. As you know, updated public health information and news is coming to you, your colleagues, your families, and your neighbors on a daily basis, sometimes at an overwhelming rate. So it's appropriate to begin with Julie Orio, who is leading the COVID-19 crisis response. Julie.
Good afternoon. I'm Julie Orio, Vice President of Student Life. Thank you, Father Paul, and much appreciation to everyone for being here today, and to all of the faculty and staff who are working tirelessly as we respond to the COVID-19 crisis. It truly is and will remain a community-wide effort. As you know, we began tracking COVID-19 in January. Early steps included the activation of the Advisory Committee on Communicable Diseases, travel information, a COVID-19 resource page with at the time focused on prevention and education. And as the situation progressed and more information became available about the serious nature of COVID-19, we then saw the activation of the COVID-19 management team, who was charged with responding to developments and informing the USF community as the university navigated this pandemic. Our continuity of instruction resource team came together as remote learning became a real possibility in slowing the spread of COVID-19. Additional travel guidance and restrictions were put in place. And then based on local, state, and national guidance to help slow the spread of COVID-19, including the statewide shelter in place that has just been extended in San Francisco, USF moved to online classes. At that time, residential students were asked to return to their permanent addresses, and housing was put in place for students who needed to remain on campus. Those students are still with us. All student support services were moved online, and usage has remained consistent and even increased in some areas. We know there are a lot of questions about how and when USF will reopen fully. And as Father Paul stated, our goal is to begin the fall semester with as much in-person instruction for new and continuing students as is safely possible. Although the majority of us are working remotely, working groups and other teams are closely tracking the latest public health guidance as the COVID-19 situation continues to evolve. And like other sectors of the economy, higher education is dependent on the directives from local and state officials, and we are in constant communication with these leaders and their representatives. In coordination with the COVID-19 response team, many working groups, as Father Paul mentioned, were established right away and are meeting regularly to plan and coordinate responses. Additional information will be shared from some of these working groups. And for those that aren't, you can find all of that information and membership on the COVID-19 resource page, and that is being updated. But please know that the health, the safety, and the well-being of our campus community will always remain our highest priority as we determine which option, or blend of options more likely, in-person, hybrid, online courses we will pursue for the fall. We know that strict social distancing, enhanced safety measures will need to be in place for an extended period of time. And we know that these measures will include a robust infrastructure for testing, tracing, as well as isolation of USF campuses and activities. The USF Public Health Working Group that Father Paul mentioned is working closely with the San Francisco Department of Public Health. This partnership will continue to advise the USF campus on public health policies and practices, with the San Francisco Department of Public Health taking the lead. This is to ensure the health and well-being of the campus community. And this includes contact tracing, testing mechanisms. Please be assured that the many steps are being taken and will continue to be taken. Every room on campus is being inventoried for social distancing measures. A huge shout out to the facilities and our essential workers still on campus. Masks are being secured, travel guidelines are being updated, and that's just to call out a few of the things. Campus will look different, but the USF spirit and our commitment to our mission and values will always remain the same. All of the efforts of the many working groups are informing the USF roadmap for reopening. This living, breathing document will provide a roadmap for navigating through the COVID-19 pandemic at the University of San Francisco. And the goal of the document is to facilitate an effective path forward in a rapidly changing environment. The document will continue to be updated, refined, as we receive additional local, state, and federal information. And this document will be shared with the community soon. It will live online, and it will be updated on an ongoing basis. In all of the uncertainty and the difficulties that many of us have mentioned already, I hold tight, like many others, that there is a silver lining. I do believe that the structure and support that we have put in place, all of us, faculty, staff, our students, not without challenges, will serve us well into the future. In the long run, it will make us a stronger institution. I now introduce Shirley McGuire, Senior Vice Provost for Academic Affairs, who will share updates from the Continuity of Instruction Working Group. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Shirley McGuire, Senior Vice Provost, and I was tasked at the end of February with forming the Continuity of Instruction Group as the idea that we might have to jump to remote teaching and learning started to become more and more of a reality. This group, slides please, John, when you have a chance. This group was created a joint effort between associate deans in each one of the schools, Educational Technology Services of ITS, and the co-curricular units in student life, including CASA, Student Disability Services. This group was created right at the end of February, has been working very hard to both prepare us for the jump and to continually navigate that jump into remote teaching. And I want to thank them for their work, all the work that they have done, navigating issues, looking for risks, trying to mitigate those risks, but also providing with many of the training sessions that our faculty and our staff have been a part of. I also get an opportunity to thank all of you, echoing what everyone has said. When we were envisioning the jump, we knew it was going to be difficult. And of course, there was a lot of fear and anxiety we were navigating even when we were talking about it. And then the input that we received from students, from parents, from actually many of your peers just tells us that we had done an outstanding job. And that jump allowed students to continue with their coursework and many students to graduate right now. So it was a very important move. So we have been working hard on those tasks, and the current goals in front of us are, we are providing assistance to the provost, to Provost Cannon, and to the deans as they develop each school's instructional delivery plan. We know the schools all have unique needs and they serve different groups of students. There are overall factors that we are considering. That roadmap is crucial in that, but we also know each school needs its own source of information and needs strategies. So those plans are being developed in the schools with the deans, with their faculty. So we are providing support there. We're also supporting both the curricular and the co-curricular side with trying to identify the resources that are needed both during the summer and the fall. We want to be able to learn from what we've already done, improve things, find new areas that might need shoring up, and be able to identify those and work through them. We work in very close collaboration with Summer 2020 and with Fall 2020 working groups. And we're very happy that we are now going to increase collaboration with faculty-led groups. In particular, the USFFA is creating a rapid response group. I believe that's been created. And there are many school level groups who have been extremely active, already holding meetings and sending information to the group. And we are looking forward to that very active collaboration because we need all of that input and we need to learn from you what has worked and what, you know, could use some improvement. Next slide. So in questions that were submitted ahead of time, some of you asked about some specifics. What are we doing? So there are models that of instructional delivery that are out there. Sorry, you all just got to meet my cat. Models of instructional delivery that are out there, and we are reviewing them in relationship to the safety protocols that Julie was just talking about, to space constraints, again, having people measuring out exactly what social distancing would take, and the technology resources. I do want to say that we are very fortunate that ITS was looking ahead to seeing what resources we needed, but we know we might need we might need one specifically tailored to certain kinds of instructions. So we're gathering that information so that the deans can use it in their plans, ITS can use it in their plans to ready, the registrar can look at the class schedule. We're developing improved training modules for both online and remote delivery possibilities in the fall. What type of additional training do we need? What types of things could we share across different groups? Incredibly creative work has been done. So we're trying to share that information. Also with Gleason, with Student Disability Services, with CASA, how can we do this all now, both on the ground and remotely? We've been an in-person university for 150 years, but now we know how technology can help us feel safe, but also how it can help us be in contact with our students and enforce our teaching. So we want to be able to use them. So additional information that everyone I think is going to find useful. There are 2 surveys that have been launched to help with decision making. Both of them close tomorrow. There's a student survey out about their experiences this past spring. About, I believe 1,600 students have already completed that survey, and we still have another day. There's a faculty survey out, and if you're a faculty member, please take that survey. We want your input on what it was been like dear spring 2020, but then for input around fall scenarios. And to highlight a couple of things that are in process right now, in concert with ETS, we developed an 8-hour training module for instructors who are teaching online this summer, so that we can have a very robust experience. We also assisted with the creation of a robust online experience for international students for summer 2020 and for spring and for fall 2020, and some guidance around these courses, recognizing that some of our students, it takes some time for them to be able to join us here in the city of San Francisco. So those are some of the things that Continuity of Instruction has been working on. We are going to continue to work with the other working groups, but particularly with the deans and the faculty, and we're eager to find new ways to improve what we did during the jump. So now I'm going to turn it over to Jeff Hamrick, our Vice Provost for Instructional Budget Planning and Analytics, and he will talk about summer 2020.
Thank you, Shirley. John, I think I've got a couple of slides to use as well. The cabinet recognized early as our faculty moved their spring instruction to a remote modality that we needed to prepare immediately to make sure that our summer instructional offerings were successful. As many of you know, the summer enterprise at USF is approximately where $28 million of our net tuition is generated. And it was important in order to mitigate the risk faced by the university financially for fiscal year 2021 that we be successful during that period of time. So the Summer 2020 group is a cross-functional group with representatives from Strategic Enrollment Management, CASA, as well as associate deans from the schools and college. And some of our accomplishments include, first of all, making a recommendation to the Continuity of Instruction group and cabinet that we formally move all of our summer instruction online. We created a common set of talking points for our deans to communicate out to faculty advisors who are working to get students registered for both summer and fall courses. And that common set of common talking points was socialized with CASA advisors as well. We have launched a new digital marketing campaign using reallocated budgets in order to increase our enrollments of visiting students. There are folks out there who are sheltering in place at home who previously didn't have the option of taking a course online at USF during the summer. And we are specifically trying to recruit that type of visiting student during this summer. We also rolled out a new email campaign to students who had already registered for summer courses, as well as for students who had not already registered for summer courses. That email campaign was supported by a recommendation system that actually recommended specific summer course offerings to students over the email and had links through to information about those courses. I think next slide, John. We were lagging behind initially on undergraduate registration in the weeks after the onset of coronavirus, but right now our undergraduate registrations at the School of Nursing and Health Professions and the college and the School of Management are in excess of budget goals. Graduate registration is still a little bit behind budget target, but is catching up very quickly. We have, through our colleagues in the instructional design team in ITS, and through the Continuity of Instruction group, provided training for remote instruction to 250 full and part-time faculty members. And so far, overall, the picture for summer looks fairly good. We know we will be short on other sources of summer revenue, such as revenue from summer conferences and revenue from summer housing. So the group's goal now is to kind of hit the ball out of the ballpark and try to mitigate some of the shortfalls we will be facing in other summer-related revenue areas. My thanks to everyone on this group, and I'm going to turn things over now to my colleague, Michael Beceda, who's the lead on an analogous group, the Fall 2020 Working Group.
Thank you, Jeff, and it's a pleasure to have a chance to talk to all of you and to be able to say thank you, because as others have pointed out, the work of recruiting and retaining students is the work of a community, not of any individual or even any division of the university. But if we can go to the Fall 2020 slides. As is noted, the Fall 2020 group was charged with capitalizing efforts, coordinating efforts to make sure to the extent possible we meet new student enrollment objectives, and that we develop, as Lester referenced earlier, campaigns to retain current undergraduates, to re-recruit current undergraduates, and to coordinate graduate student enrollment efforts. We have, as you have heard from Father Fitzgerald, hit an important milestone for first year recruitment of students with the May 1st deadline. And as of May 1st, almost 1,500 new first-year students have committed to USF. That's slightly more than a year ago, and in many ways an extraordinary outcome given the challenges that we face, as did other institutions, but particularly USF, because of our very geographically dispersed student population and our typical reliance on the opportunity of those students to come to campus in the spring for our yield events. We were able, in short order, with the help of many across campus, to unveil a comprehensive suite of online opportunities for students, prospective students and their parents to interact with admission counselors, faculty members, our current students, and those efforts were fundamental to our ability to bring those 1,500 students to commit for the fall. Likewise, right now, colleagues, most notably AVP Shona Malazzo, are working on a comprehensive student recruitment and retaining effort. And as well, grad and transfer student efforts are ongoing. So in many ways, we are, if we can go to the next slide, we are at a very good place for the fall, given all of these challenges. Nevertheless, there remain significant questions about the fall because, as if you've read or followed the higher education literature, everybody is concerned about what we talk about as summer melt. And that is the proportion of those students who commit for the fall who ultimately decide not to enroll, either because they defer their attendance, they decide to go to another institution. And in this case, because of COVID-19, we have significant concerns about financial challenges that they will face that will lead them to make other decisions about their fall enrollment and any number of other things. So we expect MELT on those who have committed to be significantly higher than in prior years. So even with 1,500 or so commitments in a normal year, we would be on track to hit our enrollment goals. With a higher MELT, perhaps double or triple what would happen in a normal year, we could be considerably 10 to 15% or more below our fall enrollment targets. Likewise, registration of current undergraduates is lagging by about 4% from historic levels, raising questions about retention. That could, a 4% higher MELT in those students could be another couple hundred undergraduates. So all of these things raise significant challenges. And lastly, as Father Fitzgerald noted earlier, we expect that the need to provide financial aid to both new and current students in the months ahead will be much higher than it has been in the past. So my report is overall from fall 2020 that we feel encouraged by the work that's been done to attract the 1,500 commitments to date, but there remain significant issues regarding our ability to meet enrollment targets for the fall. With that, I will turn it over to my colleague, Vice President Ellen Ryder.
Hello, everyone. I'm here to talk about the fiscal stimulus package that I'm actually working on with Michael Peseda.
Sorry about that, Shirley.
That's okay. That's okay. I think I have, hopefully. There we are. So we had so many questions come in about this issue that we thought we'd do a very quick update from this work group. Michael and I have been working on obtaining the money from the federal stimulus. Yes, the University of San Francisco will receive an estimate that's over $7 million of aid from the CARES Act. The first half of those funds go directly to students for them to use as they please in response to students, and we believe all students, being impacted by COVID-19. So we were immediately asked for those funds. We just received those funds. And what we're doing right now is setting up a process that allows us to be able to give the federal government later what it needs to in documentation. And we hope to be able to announce within the next day or so exactly what that process will be for the students. So we're very happy that at least 3.6 million of those funds will very soon go into the hands of our students. Another half of those funds, institutions are allowed to use in relationship to emergencies. And we certainly have, many things that we've had to do in relationship to the emergency. So we are, because we've already received the student funds, we are now able to ask for the second half, which we are doing. And we are looking for hopefully additional federal funding. So we will be reading every website, watching everything that the Department of Education and the federal government is doing and be ready. That group, by the way, includes members of Accounting and Business Services, Office of Student Financial Services, and Office of Contracts and Grants, so that we're prepared to be able to download that information. So that's a very quick update just to make sure that the community is aware that we are doing everything we can to be able to receive those funds from the federal government to help our students and to help the university. And now I will turn over to Charlie Cross, Vice President of Business and Finance.
Thank you, Shirley. I hope the entire community is weathering these difficult times. USF is committed to surviving during this pandemic as it has weathered other difficult times in its 165-year history. USF survived the 1906 earthquake and fire, which destroyed the entire campus. It survived 2 world wars and the Great Depression, and I'm confident we can now make the necessary adjustments to get through this situation and be an even stronger institution when the country and the world recover. Our working group consists of Tyrone Cannon, Jeff Hamrick, Donna Davis, David Philpott, Ellen Ryder, and Opinder Bawa. Our group has been charged with developing scenarios related to the potential enrollment shortfalls, increases in financial aid and related room and board, outlining possible expense reductions, and developing plans to communicate with the community. Our hope is that enrollment will be stable, philanthropy will be strong, the investment markets will fully recover, and the capital markets will be accessible. However, the early indications we're receiving suggest that all may not be that rosy. We need to work together to enable our dedicated faculty and staff to continue to deliver these services to our students in the community. Thank you for all your questions that you have raised and ideas you have shared. These have helped shape our analysis and recommendations, as well as these comments that I'm sharing with you today. USF receives its revenues from 3 main sources. 1, student-driven tuition, fees, and room and board. 2, philanthropy, and 3, investment income. Over 93% of our total revenue is derived from these student sources, and the balance is philanthropy, investment income, and some small miscellaneous sources. As a result, we're very vulnerable to declines in enrollment and/or increased demand for financial aid. Additionally, we will see increased costs associated with public health regulations for testing, tracing, and perhaps quarantine. Social distancing and community welfare will not be insignificant demands on our budget as well. Many believe that USF's endowment is a large pot of money that can be tapped to address this difficult situation. Unfortunately, the vast majority of the endowment is restricted for specific purposes, and we may not invade the principle provided by the donors. We are fiduciaries of those funds, and we must honor the restrictions and maintain intergenerational equity for the future generations benefiting from these gifts. Given the uncertainty of our fall enrollments, the likely increased need for financial aid, the decline in our investments and lowered interest income, we must plan for reduced expenses. We've received input from many and continue to welcome your suggestions. I encourage you to share any and all ideas with me, our working group, or your supervisor. We're studying a range of net revenue shortfalls ranging from $15 to $100 million. As we have limited resources, we must reduce our expenses to counter this possible net revenue decline. We've identified the following cost-saving measures as solutions or possible solutions for implementation. 1, a hiring freeze. 2, compensation freeze. 3, compensation rate decreases. 4, elimination and or curtailment of temporary or contract workers. 5, vacation usage. 6, deferral of capital expenses. 7, operating expense reductions. And 8, the most painful, furloughs and or layoffs. We're hopeful that these measures will allow the university to survive this unprecedented situation. I understand these are hard issues, and I welcome your thoughts, concerns, and ideas to help solve these problems. Thank you for your understanding and support of the university. And now, Peter Welch, Vice President of Development, will speak about our strategic planning process.
Thanks, Charlie. As Charlie mentioned, I'm Peter Welch, Vice President for Development, and my charge at the university is to provide leadership and strategic direction for philanthropy and to guide the day-to-day management of our $300 million comprehensive campaign, which includes collaboration across campus towards its planning and toward its execution. I want to thank the entire community again for joining us and for all the fine work that you've done over the last several months during this very trying time. It's clearly a continued demonstration of your commitment to our students and to the community during these uncertain times. The work that's taking place across campus to adjust our operations and delivery of curriculum during this pandemic is inspiring and reflects the strong shared commitment from all parts of our campus to our students and to their learning outcomes. So again, thank you. Though we still have a long journey ahead of us, we all anticipate, as a community through this pandemic, it's important to begin to think about USF in a post-pandemic environment. The work groups that have been highlighted thus far are focused on sustaining current operations and making needed modifications to best serve our students and to meet the challenges represented in the pandemic. The strategic planning work group's charge is to explore the longer-term aspirations for the university and to map a plan toward those aspirations. So the charge, in short, is to engage a planning process which will begin immediately. It will help to define the university's ongoing and long-term priorities, to identify current and future opportunities as well as vulnerabilities, and a means to capitalize upon the opportunities and to mitigate the vulnerabilities, and will establish a framework to chart a shared path forward for the university as one USF. The core working group is being formed this month and will include members from across campus. Now, some have asked, why now? As I referenced earlier, we are finishing year 6 of our campaign, and we will conclude the current effort at the end of fiscal year 22. I'm pleased to say, even in light of the pandemic, we remain on target and in fact a bit ahead of pace, which is good news for all the very important needs across campus that this campaign will support. In the planning for this campaign, it was envisioned that a university-wide strategic planning process would commence in the spring of 2021 to ready the university for a new campaign, to map new aspirations, and to identify an intersection where a new campaign might support some of those future aspirations and ongoing needs. In light of the current pandemic and the amplification of the challenges that are facing the university, as has been highlighted, Father Paul gave the charge to commence this process of strategic planning a year early. As I mentioned earlier, the core working group is being formed this month and will include broad representation from throughout the university community. As we go forward with the strategic plan, we are anticipating 3 phases along the timeline listed on the slide. Phase 1, which I've referenced, is the recruitment and the planning. And the planning is really centered on mapping our plan, planning our work so that we can work towards that plan being accomplished. And it's a process mapping that's going to be taking place in the month of May. In the months of June, July, and August, we'll be drafting a living document, much in the same way that Julie Orio referenced earlier in getting back to the classroom. This is a document that will continue to breathe and live and respond to the situations as they evolve around us. In phase 3, after we've had a chance to take in community input from many different sources, in September and October, the strategic plan will be reviewed and refined and then rolled out. It is anticipated that at the December Board of Trustees meeting that this plan would be approved. You should anticipate several additional communications in the weeks and months ahead. I know that this will be a big opportunity for us to come together as a community as one USF. I know from the many conversations that I've had across campus with members of the community over the past several months that there is strong interest in and enthusiasm for this process to move forward, even in light of our current environment. Through the planning process, we endeavor to provide shared community consensus on institutional direction and prioritization of those aspirations in that institutional direction, an identification of resources, human, financial, physical, required to meet these objectives, a detail of our targets and a timeline for implementation, and a process for regular review of USF's progress toward these targets as a community and with the Board of Trustees. As this process evolves, the community should anticipate regular updates and several invitations to participate in the planning. We're excited to commence this effort, even though it's a year early, and we look forward to and are counting on you and your active participation in this process. That concludes my report on the initiation of the Strategic Planning Working Group. Now it's my pleasure to welcome Father Paul back to the virtual podium to continue the town hall.
Thank you very much, Peter. Thanks everybody for those reports. Many members of the USF community submitted questions ahead of time when the invitation to this town hall went out. We've tried to address many of those in the course of this session. Thank you for your submissions. During the session itself, other questions have been submitted and are being submitted. And now we will pose some of those questions to our presenters. All questions with answers will be posted on MyUSF along with a captioned video of this session. So interim provost Tyrone Cannon, senior vice provost Shirley McGuire, and vice provost Jeff Hamrick are curating questions. We'll read them and pose them to presenters. So the first question, please.
Thank you, Father Paul, and good afternoon to all. And before I begin, I want to just quickly underscore what Lester and Sonia had to say in regards to the great work and support that our faculty and staff are providing during the pandemic. We have over 20 questions that have come in during the course of the town hall, and I will begin this part of our town hall with a question for Father Paul. The question is, would leadership team members consider not taking a salary increase, which I understand will be deferred, but that date was not clear in your April 24th email? And will this salary reduction help to avoid possibly layoffs for others? Father Paul.
Thank you very much for that question. You know, I think as Charlie Cross referenced, you know, this is going to require some shared sacrifice on the part of everyone. But I would like this, you know, any shared sacrifice to be progressive. So I've announced that I will take a 20% reduction in my compensation. I think it's important for me to lead by example. And then the members of cabinet and the academic deans have all volunteered to take a 15% reduction in their compensation. And we are in conversation with the rest of the leadership team about their participation in this effort. And yes, if we and if other members of the community take a reduction in our compensation, this will save us from having to do as much reduction in force as might otherwise be necessary. I do want also for this, as I say, to be progressive. So the lowest paid people in our community will be the most protected, and the highest paid people will make the greatest sacrifice.
Thank you. I'm now going to turn over to Jeff and Shirley, who have been fielding questions that have come in during the course of the town hall.
Sure, and I'm happy to start. Father Paul, I actually have another question for you. When I talked about the CARES Act, I didn't talk about what will happen with the students who are not covered by the CARES Act, students who are, of course, crucial parts of the USF community, the DACA students, the international students. What will USF do for them, given that they're not being covered by the CARES Act?
So yes, the Department of Education, in clarifications after the act was passed, said that we are not allowed to give CARES money to our DACA students, for example, and international students. Our Board of Trustees stepped up and pledged to raise $1 million from among themselves and former trustees and close friends of the university to have a COVID-19 response fund. And so we will use those monies to support our DACA students. So we won't be using the federal money, but we'll be using philanthropic money to make sure that every member of our community has the support that they need to be able to continue their education with us.
This next question is for Vice President Orio. Julie, there are some question submitters who have concerns about how social distancing worked at USF before our students largely left the campus, and also some questions about how social distancing might work in the fall semester. What do we know about that yet? And how are we going to encourage students to engage in whatever are the appropriate public health recommendations at that time?
Sure. So not just for students, it'll be for all of us. Prior to folks coming back, and even right now, there are students on our campus, there are essential employees on our campus. So we are all practicing social distancing when being on campus and taking all the necessary precautions. So our essential employees know there's signage all around campus in terms of all of the recommendations that came through the SF ordinances, and we're abiding by all of that. And then all that information will be shared with the community prior to however we're going to be coming back, and the expectation that it's on everybody to follow those practices and protocols that we'll put in place. This is a big effort from the San Francisco, from our public health working group, our faculty and staff that are working through that. And we will be developing a large social marketing campaign around public health initiatives, education, prevention, all the social distancing measures. So all of that information will be shared with the community.
Great, thank you, Julie. So there are a set of questions for Vice President Opinderbaugh about our technology capabilities, things that we might be considering. I know that you invest a great deal of time in preparing us for the first jump, but I think there's a couple of different questions about things we might be considering now that we're moving into summer and fall, things that we might have learned.
Oh, thank you, Shirley. I think Father Paul mentioned a great example earlier about a professor that was using Zoom and Canvas in a very methodical way. I think these are some of the tools that everybody's familiar with that are gaining more and more traction. We're spending a good amount of time with faculty members and consultations and in group settings, sharing with them these technologies and how do you best use them. There's also another wave of technologies we're going to be looking at in the coming 3 to 6 months, and these are really to do with how can we do a better job of automating manual activities. We still have a lot of manual forms, so how do we digitize them? How do we make them electronic and route them electronically so that we could do this remotely if we're not all together on campus at the same time. The other technologies we're taking a look at is things like queue management. How do you manage a sequence of people that have activities to be accomplished digitally when you can't stand in line? What do you do? How do you do queue management? Collaboration tools. Slack is another very popular tool on campus, and we don't have an enterprise license yet for it, so we could take a look at that. We're very fortunate that technologies like Zoom, Zoom particularly, we've been the beneficiaries of a donation from their founder, Eric Kwan. So we're looking at other technologies, and Salesforce is another one. They'd like to do some work with us and San Francisco Department of Public Health. So there's a couple of other opportunities that are coming up that we could benefit from.
Thank you, Upinder. A few weeks ago, the president announced that supervisors are being encouraged to assign vacation times to their employees. And we have some questions about that topic. So I thought I might ask our Chief Financial Officer to explain how reduction in vacation balances benefits the university. And then also maybe to ask Donna Davis to talk about why now might be a good time for people to take vacation leave.
Thank you, Jeff. Accounting principles require us to record a liability for the cumulative effect of that vacation balances. So at the end of May every year, we're required to calculate what we would owe all employees at that point in time for that vacation. If that liability is reduced, it is a credit to our expense or reduction in our expenses. It's an accounting treatment. We're required to do it, and it impacts our balance sheet and our statement of activities. It is in the same as saving any other money any other expense we wouldn't incur. Donna, to you.
Hi, thank you, Charlie. Thank you, Jeff. The University of San Francisco has a vacation policy that is intended to reward employees for the hard work and commitment that they show. And I think in recent years, sometimes it's difficult for us to take that time. I think right now, in the university encouraging and assigning people to be on vacation, there's also some added confusion and concern. It's not the way we ordinarily think about vacation, to stay home or to not be able to go somewhere. The decisions that we're trying to make across the university are strategic. They are meant to anticipate and plan for what already have been significant increases in expense and what could be continuing increases in expense and what we may see as far as severely constrained revenue dollars. So the university feels strongly that vacation is meant to be time away, not time that should harm the university employees' opportunities or work, but to reflect. There are many, many studies and reports about how stressful this has been for everyone. And we heard that we know members in our community have suffered very real losses as a result of COVID-19. And so we all need to take time to retreat, to reflect, to hopefully de-stress. And if in doing so, we can also address what Charlie has just explained, that's going to be an added benefit for us. I know I saw in the Q&A stream questions about what are new and evolving types of vacation plans. And certainly, as Charlie said earlier, we welcome all ideas and we shouldn't at this time take anything off the table. So we will continue to look at that. The goal is to continue to prioritize and preference vacation as a benefit for all of our employees.
Great. Thank you, Donna. Thank you, Charlie. There are a number of questions about the survey results, the surveys that I mentioned. I talked about the continuity of instruction, both the student survey and the faculty survey. And to answer, yes, we are absolutely, my office especially will post the results of the surveys. Of course, making sure we keep comments confidential. And make sure we present it based on rules of anonymity, but we will be posting those results. We're also specifically sharing them with deans so that they can make decisions, and with the student life, so they can also, we can improve many of the risk factors, many of the things that we have in place now, and be able to come up with scenarios. It does include part-time faculty, and a staff survey is an excellent idea, and we need to get that one out next.
Thank you, Shirley. There's a couple of questions about how budget cuts need to be done strategically rather than penalizing units equally. So I'm going to give that question to myself and then ask Father Fitzgerald a separate question. So I have presided over 6 different budget formation cycles at USF. Unfortunately, each of those has involved base budget cuts. Those cuts have never been allocated out to the units in a proportional fashion, meaning we haven't done 3% cuts at CAS, 3% cuts in strategic enrollment management, 3% cuts in development. The cabinet has always looked at different categories of expenditure and university priorities and developed schemes for allocating out cut targets to those units that are disproportionate. Some get more, some get less, in order to reflect the university's priorities and the president's priorities as well. So for example, in the last 2 budget formation cycles, we have provided collectively a measure of protection for strategic enrollment management so that it is able to meet its enrollment objectives, development so that it can successfully complete the capital campaign, and student life because of increasing demands from our students for a variety of services that are offered out of that area. So I would not expect any COVID-19 related cuts to be done proportionally or across the board as well. They will likely be strategic as well. So another set of questions that we have relates to how USF is engaging with the government or government officials at this point in time, presumably to collaborate or to even secure resources for the institution. So I was hoping to ask you, Father Paul, to highlight some of the ways that USF is conducting itself in those engagements.
Yes, and this really builds on our reputation. It builds on our successes with our students. As you all know, we're top 2% in the country for students outperforming their predicted graduation rates, top 2.5 for salaries 10 years out. So by all the external measures, we are a top 100 university that has a very successful track record. I was on a virtual town hall a couple weeks ago with Speaker Nancy Pelosi, and she was virtually meeting with faith leaders from across the city. And I was one of the 4 that was allowed to ask her a question. I kind of led by saying, as you know, most private, not-for-profit higher education institutions in the United States were founded by religious communities. And the D'Alessandro and Pelosi families sent a lot of their students to Jesuit universities. And she laughed. Her father, all her brothers went to Loyola Baltimore. Her husband went to Georgetown. They've got a grandchild right now at Loyola, New Orleans. She went on for about 5 minutes about Jesuit education, and I wish I had recorded it. But then I asked her to please include private not-for-profit higher education in the CARES Act. And we were not mentioned in the early Senate version, but she did include then in the House version, like $12 to $14 billion. And we continue to work with her office. I got a nice note from her the other day, congratulating us on getting the CARES money. And so we hope to be in CARES 4 and CARES 5 as well. I'm on the executive committee of the Association of Independent Catholic Colleges and Universities, California Colleges and Universities. And so I've been asked to be on a task force to work with Governor Newsom's office. So the UCs, the CSUs, the private not-for-profits, and the community colleges are all, engaging the governor, talking about how essential our sector is for the future of the state. Just as we're talking with Speaker Pelosi about how important our sector is for the future of the country as a whole. Mary Daly, the president of the San Francisco Federal Reserve Bank, has asked me to join a task force that she's forming to think about how she is going to use her vote whenever the Fed gets together. The governors of the Federal Reserve branches each get one vote to form, Fed policy. Yeah, and then I've been asked to do something with Loyola New Orleans. I'm a trustee there. So I'm being asked to represent our values, our importance out to the community. Peter Wilch and I and his whole team are talking also with our benefactors. So philanthropy and public assistance, are going to be part of. They're not going to close the gap completely, but they're going to help. They're going to be important pieces as we weather this really not just the pandemic, but especially the recession, which everyone predicts, or economists predict, is going to be worse than 2008, more like 1929.
Thank you, Father Fitzgerald. Provost Gannon, there are quite a few questions about the process that provosts and the deans and will be using to decide in the fall what delivery is going to look like. For people asking, will we go completely fully online? Would we consider that? Would we, when will we know? Are we going to wait and see? And I know that you've been working with the deans and in terms of balancing a number of concerns. So I thought perhaps you could take the first part about those concerns, the things that you're thinking through, and then I'm happy to add a couple of very specific things that we're trying to do on continuity of instruction to support you all.
Sure, thank you, Shirley. As has been indicated earlier in today's town hall, we are planning and hoping that we will begin our fall semester on the ground and continue to provide the high touch education that we are known for. Of course, as was the case this spring, we will be guided by City of San Francisco health regulations, as well as whatever regulations may come from Governor Newsom, depending on where we are in the pandemic. So as a way of preparing for both, while we are putting our energies into being on the ground, we are also continuing to train faculty with the support of IT and staff to be prepared to shift should we need to do so in the fall semester, should we see an increase or a return of the curve, if you will, regarding the pandemic. But as of now, we are happily engaged in planning to be on the ground. And we may also, as I think Julie indicated earlier, we may need to pay attention to social distancing that might be required from the City of San Francisco in terms of how many folks might be in the classroom, et cetera, et cetera. But that's kind of a broad overview of what we are planning to do.
And just to add an example, so Provost candidate asked me to meet with each of the deans to learn, and I know the deans are having conversations with faculty, and that will continue, even at the course level, which courses do we really prioritize to be on the ground? Because, you know, if you're a chemist, you can only talk about chemicals so long. You know, if you are in the healthcare field, you need to be in the simulation labs. Those that maybe would be actually quite well completely up in the air as continued online classes because we've learned so much. And some people have showed amazing skills in that area, and that would allow some social distancing, gives us some more space. And then there's a, hybrid too. And I'm also seeing this, and Provost Cannon and the deans are receiving lots of creative ideas from the faculty. So the answer to the question, it's not wait and see in terms of planning. It's more wait and see in terms of our ability to be able to be in the in-person institution we've been for 150 years. So we've been working together on that. So I think that answered about 4 or 5 different questions, and I'll turn it back to Jeff.
I think an important point that actually continuity of instruction has underscored is while we plan to be on the ground, we may also need to do, as you said, Shirley, hybrid for perhaps international students who are not able to return to San Francisco at the beginning of the semester, or we may have students who have compromised health and still need to be engaged remotely. So thank you for the question.
Thank you, Tyrone and Shirley. We have a number of questions in the chat thread about furloughs, layoffs, temporary layoffs. I'm going to call on Donna Davis, who's a member of the Continuity of Operations Group. Donna, what can you tell us about the timing or use of these options, and maybe even help us understand the distinction between some of those phrases that I used?
Sure, thank you, Jeff. Timing, I think that is probably the toughest one to answer. We want to make the best possible decisions with as clear information as we can, and yet it doesn't come as quickly as we want. So we definitely need to be thoughtful about it. So the way I would answer the timing question is that we need to make sure that any decision we make gives our employees, and especially those who would be directly impacted, enough time for their own planning and enough information and notice. So we would have to build in the proper ramp for the decision to be made, communicated, understood, and implemented. So let me answer a question. There is a lot of confusion, as usual in California with the law. But I think that the way that we would use the word furlough is it is a temporary action. It is something that we do in reducing hours because perhaps someone's work isn't quite as full-time, or the work that is important and relevant and matters to the institution can be deferred to be done at a later period of time. or perhaps we're shifting to ensure that we're addressing other issues at a particular moment. But again, all of the work is important and it matters. These positions matter. The furlough is a temporary reduction in those hours, perhaps by 1 day a week, 2 days a week, more, or it is a time in which we don't do that work for a short period of time. It could be a month, it could be 2 months. I suppose it could be longer, not much longer. Temporary really does mean temporary. During that period of time, employees would still have their benefits. And not because simply our benefits plans allow that, but because the university is committed to that very important contribution to the well-being of our community members. So furloughs do not jeopardize medical and welfare benefits. I am certainly very happy to go into greater detail at another time, but in this moment, I think it's important to think about it as the university saves money principally in salary. There are many ways that the continuity of operations group and their advisors are going to look at how we could truly implement this and the mechanics of it. That is information that should be, as I said earlier, shared as early as possible and often and widely and transparently, and we will do that. The piece that's also important in looking at that is how does a department know, and is it and would they find out, oh my gosh, tomorrow this is happening? Again, no, that's not how this works. I think also on people's minds as we talk about reductions on this temporary basis is how do staff who are non-represented have the opportunity to weigh in on these important initiatives? And I think right now what we've seen is that we've got an informal way in which we do that. We have the information that goes down from vice presidents and deans, or it comes up from frontline people, and there's an exchange of information. In advance of COVID-19, there was a strong initiative that parallels the important shared governance that Dr. Poole referenced at the beginning of this town hall. We need to have shared governance with all of our important constituents and our individual members of our community. And so we look to that. We've had some great success with UBAC, and I think we're looking at ways to increase our commitment to and broaden the opportunities for that advisory and shared role. So I am working with human resources in particular and others and deans and vice presidents to fast track a way in which we can have non-represented staff be able to participate in an advisory conversation that is far more formalized so that we can socialize these issues and exchange information with one another. That's very broad. It is a lot, but no one should ever hesitate to contact human resources, labor relations, or the Office of General Counsel.
Thank you, Don. So we do have a group of questions that I believe really are asking, how do we, in this current environment, look at our enrollment figures and look at our predictions and look at the melt, and what are the things that we have to consider, or how are we considering them now? And I thought maybe Jeff Hammer could start talking about our summer enrollments, and then Michael could talk to us a little bit about the fall.
So let me just comment briefly on the uncertainty associated with summer enrollments. We have 8 different summer sessions here at the University of San Francisco. So there is no unified census date for the summer at which we can say, these are our enrolled students and this is the tuition we've taken in. Students have a fair amount of flexibility to cancel their registrations for summer courses, and that is the greatest point of uncertainty at this moment. We don't have any reason to believe that students will cancel their summer coursework registrations at a higher rate than usual at this point. We have communicated often and clearly about the fact that this coursework is now online, but we also know that about half of these students registered for summer coursework pre-coronavirus. And so as they come to understand the learning experience that they will encounter this summer, some of them might choose not to remain registered in those courses. That is one area of uncertainty for us. in fact, it's pretty much the only uncertainty associated with summer at this point. We do onboard a couple of new graduate programs during the summer, and there are some uncertainties associated with that. Those programs tend to have very good plans that they're advancing as to how they're going to manage the uncertainties around coronavirus at this point. And I'm speaking of our sport management and data science programs, as well as I believe one program at the School of Education. MELT refers primarily to a phenomenon with undergraduate depositing for the fall semester. And I'm gonna let Michael Basita comment on the uncertainties associated with fall enrollments.
Thanks, Jeff. So we have a number of milestones over the course of the summer months that give us increased certainty about whether or not students who have deposited are going to enroll or not. So even at the end of this week, there is a deadline for students to file for housing. Soon after that, the process of students registering for classes begins, and we're able to track that data. Not that long after that, bills go out to students and they're invited to begin to join the payment plan and to begin to make their initial payments. So across the summer months, we have these milestones that typically give us better and better evidence that a student will either enroll or not enroll. In addition, we will be, of course, tracking who melts, and we'll be tracking who defers, and we'll have that data. Finally, we expect summer to be very active with students not only melting, but potentially refreezing. Namely, students who may have initially thought they wanted to go to one institution far away or in some other circumstances, now changing their minds and recommitting to USF. So all of those factors will come into play, and we will have good milestones to track them as we get closer to fall census.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Michael. So this final question is really to Ellen Ryder. One, I know that all the questions that came up that we weren't able to answer or that didn't group well into a particular category, that they're going to be answers. We're going to post them. So that will be a follow-up to this town hall. But I thought perhaps you could tell everyone maybe a couple things we could be looking forward to in terms of communications after this town hall. Oh, Ellen, you're muted. Ellen, I think you're still muted. There we go. Great.
Thank you. Thank you, Shirley. I'm Ellen Ryder, the Vice President for Marketing and Communications. And as Shirley mentioned, this entire session, this virtual town hall, has been recorded and will be posted on my USF, along with all the questions grouped according to topic area with answers also on my USF. It'll take us a couple of days to get that in place, but we'll let everybody know when that happens. I really appreciate the question about future communications. Of course, we are continuing all our standard and baseline communications operations and platforms through email and posting on the website. Resource pages have proven to be a really important source and continually updated information on different areas, especially COVID-19 right now. So those standard communication tools will continue. What we would like to do more of are, especially in this remote environment, more sessions like this. So we would love to hear from the community about what is working, what they would like to see, and to talk more about how we can get this critical information about university procedures and priorities into the hands of all our members of our community. So open doors, we want to hear from you. We want to hear feedback about today, and moving forward, want to be in closer touch with everybody in the community about these important issues that are facing USF.
Thank you, Ellen. Now back to Father Paul Fitzgerald.
Thank you very much, Shirley. In my conversation about, in my talk about our lobbying efforts, I forgot to mention that the mayor, London Breed, has asked me to be on the city's economic recovery task force as well. So we'll be able to advocate for our students, staff, and faculty, and also for the good of the common good of our city, our state, and our country, and really of humanity. We're at time, so please watch for next week's postings of all the submitted questions with answers. And please watch for and carefully read communications from me. Reach out to your managers, deans, and vice presidents with questions, concerns, and suggestions, especially suggestions. Your insights and ideas are important. Please share them with colleagues and supervisors. Thank you for the work that you're doing, for participating in this webinar today. I'm grateful for all you do each and every day for our beloved community. May God bless you and keep you and your families safe and healthy. Thank you.